we were in negotiations.
Investing in real estate, they're winning, they're making money.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Real Estate Educators Podcast, where we provide the education you can build on. I am your host, Kevin Amolsch. As you've heard before, this podcast has been so much fun because we're helping real estate investors and real estate educators. You're out there buying, fixing, and flipping, building a rental portfolio, or you're out there providing content to real estate investors. This is the podcast for you. I got a great guest with me today. I know every guest is great. I say it all the time, but this one is especially true. Eric, I've known you for many, many years. Now we run into each other at the Success Summit pretty much every single year. We're lucky enough to have you speaking this year. So we'll definitely have to talk about that. But I know you've been in the business a long time, like 18 years. So almost as long as I've been in this industry. And you've created and sold and recreated property management companies. That's sort of your niche. And I got to tell you, man, with what's going on, especially in Denver, now we have listeners from all over the country, but especially here, the landscape is changing and we have to be very careful. So I want to get into specifics. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Kevin. It's been a lot of fun to watch Pine grow through the years, the early years of the Success Summit, and yeah, super happy to be there again. We'll have a table there, and thanks for having me to speak a little bit about the legislative landscape.
Yeah, man, and I know you've been doing a lot of traveling. You and Massey, or you and Joe Massey, are great friends, and he comes on once a quarter to the podcast, and we talk about the market, the economics. So it's kind of just keeping everyone up to date on what's going on in the economy. So good friend of the show, and I know good friend of yours. And so I know you've just been traveling. Where'd you guys go?
So yeah, Joe and I spent about a week together in Portugal. And then we split off. He went and hung out in Athens, and I was up in Thessaloniki. I was in Europe for 24 days, so super fortunate to have had that experience. And yeah, we went to Alaska earlier this year, did some fishing. So always a good time with Mr. Massey.
Is that where you caught that beast behind you?
No, that was actually out of Key West. So that was my almost 4.5 foot wahoo. So yeah, pretty stoked about it.
That's cool. So I have to give you shit real quick before we move on. I told you I was going to do it. So for the listener, what are the questions that we ask our guests to fill out this little form, right? And the question is, give me a 2-sentence bio so I can do a real quick intro, because I don't want to give your whole background, right? I want you to give the background. This is what we got. And if you're listening in the car and you can't see, it is 4 paragraphs long of a bio. So we have a lot to learn from Eric. Who does not follow instructions very well.
No, I'm the worst employee ever. Hence going out on my own many moons ago.
So funny. All right, man. Well, tell us what we're going to read in this 4-paragraph bio. How'd you get your start in real estate?
So I actually kind of fell into real estate et al. In late 2007. My background, I was a former Marine, and then was in hospitality, hotels, restaurants, bars. My first kid was coming along, and I guess it was decided that working in a bar till 3 a.m. was not acceptable. So I had to go find a day job. Answered a Craigslist ad that tells you how long ago it was, to show houses for a new management company. So started showing apartments and homes. Figured I kind of had a niche at it, figured it out, moved into operations. So as an assistant property manager and then a property manager. Figured out the back end, the accounting side, and in 2012, with a partner, went out on our own, built a 450 door portfolio company, made a move and went out on my own by myself, ESR Management. Sold that to a competitor in 2017, took a contractually obligated break, non-compete, and CRT, which was formerly EcoSpace Property Management, came into existence early 21, and we've grown that over the last 3.5 years to about 960 doors under management, almost 20 team members, and it's been a blast, man. It's always something interesting. You never know what's up next.
That's interesting. So, we run into each other quite often, and
Yeah.
I never really got to know you. So this is actually awesome. I'm really happy about that. I'm excited for this episode. But so 2021 is when your property management company started.
Yes, sir.
I thought, man, for some reason in my mind, I was thinking like, what was it called? Ecosystem or
It was formerly EcoSpace Property
EcoSpace,
Management.
EcoSpace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, man, I don't know how I got that so wrong. I thought that was way before COVID. And
No, during COVID, I was so 2017. We sold ESR. I did some fix and flips with my good friend Lon Welsh, and kind of played through that. When COVID hit, we just hunkered down and didn't do anything. 2021 came along, and there was an opportunity to help a former client out, and created the EcoSpace Property Management brand. And then we rebranded it to CRT this past August. So just a rebrand. We business partner and I went separate ways, and that was kind of part of the deal. So CRT came into existence, and that's consistent, reliable, trusted.
oh, I love it. When you say you fell into the business, you're not kidding, man. I read that and you was just like I fell into it. Well, you literally did. You answered a Craigslist ad, and
Yeah,
now all of a sudden you're one of the top property management companies in the state.
we do a good job, man, and I'm super grateful for our clients that have worked with me through the years and kind of followed me around. Justin Cooper out of your outfit has trusted me, and a lot of the folks that we've met along the way at the ISS and different classes. So just super grateful for the success that we've had, and being able to provide the service that we do.
And you said you did some fix and flips also. So and you own your own properties too.
I do.
So you own properties, you manage your own, you manage other people's 900 of them, and you've done some fix and flips. So you've got like a wide range of experience.
And I was a buy sell broker for a short period of time,
Yeah.
so did that, and it's been an interesting run through real estate. I would have never guessed in a million years that former Marine that was a crash fire rescue specialist ended up here, but it's been a blast.
So you gave up on the transaction side. You gave up on the fix and flips. I think you're not still doing those, right?
I'm not. It was a good time. It was a good run. A lot of money out there. You know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So, and I've just come back to property management again and again, as it's just kind of where I belong. So,
Why is that? Do you think?
oh man, I don't know if this is a therapy session or.
No, but what I'm
Uh,
trying to dig into here is like everyone finds their niche. I mean, not everyone. The successful investors find a niche.
mhm.
I happen to love the lending side, so I'm here. You love the property management company. So to help the listener out, like what made you narrow in on this specific thing?
After 7, 8 years of doing it, kind of got my feet under me and understood the business. I feel that there's a humanistic way to go about someone's living situation, where we can treat them as humans. We do it right. We follow the laws. We're not slumlords, and my clients can still make money. So we just have taken that approach of, there's a humanistic way to go about this business. Um, we want to do things right, and I know you're former military as well, so there's one way, the right way, and that's just how we've operated. So our clients trust us with their assets because they know we're going to be thorough, and do a good job. And it's a tough business, as you well know. I mean, when you're dealing with uh, someone's home where they live, it is a necessity in this world. So um, I guess I just keep coming back to it because, one, it was kind of easy for me. It just made sense to me, and I kind of getting too old to do something else. So we'll just keep doing this.
And the fix and flip. So you've done a couple, you said, and they
Yeah.
were with lawn.
Yeah, so Lon and I partnered for a period of time, and I think we did like 20-ish.
Okay, yeah, that's significant.
So, took that experience from the property management side, doing remodels and repositioning assets that we did in the early 2000 teens, and yeah, made a run at some fix and flips, and it was a good overall experience. I don't like contractors as much as I thought I would, and it was a bit of a high stress environment. You got several $100,000 out at any given time, and a timeline to complete it. And so it was a great experience. Glad I did it, but wouldn't necessarily want to go back to that world.
Got it. So for a listener that's like maybe newer to the industry, not really sure what to do, where to go, what asset class, what approach, what's some advice maybe you would give them?
Don't get into property management. It's tough, man. And that'll kind of segue us into kind of the legal landscape and the way
Yeah.
it's changed. But in 2007, 8, when I got into the business, Colorado still had 3-day notices, right? So if you didn't pay your rent, it was a 3-day notice. That changed in the late 2000 teens to a 10-day notice, with the Colorado Supreme Court's opinion and ruling on the CARES Act. If you're a CARES Act covered property, now it's a 30-day notice. So it really has changed, and the pendulum has swung more towards the tenant and their abilities to not pay rent and not behave. So it's just become more and more challenging. Asset class. If you're an investor, I think all investors should manage their property for a short period of time. Understand the business, understand what you're doing, and then when you do get a property manager, it gives you that opportunity to have some just institutional knowledge of your property, how it works, and what to expect from them. Um, Asset class. I mean, anything from a Colfax studio, and for those who aren't familiar with Denver, Colfax is well, a scene. Uh, so you got everything from that all the way up to what we call accidental landlords, where you get married and you combine households and you have a property. What do you do with it? If you want to go that route and learn, that's amazing. I One of the interview questions that when we interview new employees is why? Why do you want to do this? This is one of the hardest ways to make money in real estate. Why this?
Mhm.
Um, and what I find the good answer is they care about people, and it's a customer service role, and they agree that there's a humanistic way to make money on a need, which is housing, and that's the way we approach it across the board.
So this is a little selfish because I'm experiencing this right now. So I'll just ask this question, then we'll just move on. But for there's a lot of changes in Denver, and
Colorado,
definitely
that's
for
all.
yes. So if you're in Colorado and you're not keeping up with this, it could create a problem, especially Eric, if they're managing it on their own, like you just
Mhm.
suggested. So I encourage you to come to the Success Summit, listen to your presentation, because that's exactly what you're talking about. All the different nuances in the Colorado regulatory environment. So my
Absolutely.
selfish question here is there mandatory mediation now before you can evict?
There is mandatory mediation if they meet a couple of criteria. So they have to receive SSI, so Social Security Supplement income, SSDI, disability income, or they receive money from TANF, which is temporary assistance for needy families. If they receive one of those three types of income, then yes, you must mediate prior to filing the eviction.
And you're not allowed to discriminate on where the income comes from, right?
That is also correct. So that law, I believe, was 2019. Source of income is a protected class in Colorado. So that really is around vouchers. So it created the requirement for an owner to accept a housing choice voucher, aka Section 8 voucher, if your property rent is covered by the voucher. So yes, source of income is a protected class.
So source of income is a protected class, but amount of income is not. So I could discriminate against the amount of money you make.
So up until this year, yes, you could make up any number that you decided was reasonable for you as an owner. But one of the Colorado laws that passed recently was you cannot ask for more than 2 times rent gross income as an income qualifier. So if your rent's $2,000 a month, if they make $4,000 a month, they are income qualified per state law.
So the state can tell me to put a tenant that really can't afford it into our, you know what's interesting about that, Eric?
That
You
is
know,
correct.
I mean, if you think about the government, we have big government now.
Sure.
And you think about the GSCs or FHA, HUD. So HUD is in charge of FHA, but they have income requirements on their loans to qualify for a mortgage. VA is the same. And I often make this point that VA has such a low default rate, lower than conventional or FHA. And it's not because it's zero down payment, it's because of their DTI ratio. I mean, they're in the 30s, right? And then FHA is in the 40s. And for the listener, a DTI is debt to income. So how much of your income can go towards your mortgage and still qualify? So what Eric's saying now is a DTI on a rent of 50, which is higher than any government sponsored loan, and you have to qualify them.
That is correct.
And that's too high. You cannot afford a 50% DTI.
So, as a rule, up until this law, the standard practice for most property managers or savvy investors was 3x, right? So we
Right.
say, you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income on housing. So we use that as our income qualifier up until this point.
That's amazing. How do you, and it's not a therapy, but doesn't that just frustrate you, Eric? Like
It
I'm talking
does.
to you and I'm getting upset now. You're firing me up here.
So I'm so fortunate for my relationship with Your Castle Real Estate. I speak at their quarterly meetings, and you can hear the collective groan when they call my name because they're going to like, what is this guy going to tell us next?
Right.
And so I don't have an opinion necessarily. I don't agree with it. But ultimately, these are the rules, and when the rules change, it's my job to protect our clients
Mhm.
and to ensure compliance. So it is frustrating that at the end of the day, what they're attempting to do, I think, is in good faith.
Sure. I
They're
agree.
looking to house more people and protect the tenant. Ultimately, as a lot of regulation typically does, it ends up hurting the people they're intending to help. And I think we'll see that over the next few years when eviction rates continue to go up because they simply can't afford it at a 50% DTI.
Yeah. And so then it becomes an eviction, which is now harder to do. So it feels like, especially in Colorado, but this is not limited to Colorado. There is like rent control all over the place. I'm hearing it from all different parts of the country.
Mhm.
Just cause evictions. It's all over the place. This is a problem. And I'm wondering, as a landlord, do I want to be a landlord? Like, is there any trends you're seeing from the mom and pops out there?
So we definitely have clients that purchased at the right time, have built equity over the course of a period of time that are exiting the business. Um, and if you're doing it by yourself, self-managed landlords are coming to us PMs more often now.
Mhm.
So I've gotten a recent influx after these laws went into effect in August of landlords that have been self-managing for a decade and said, I don't want to figure this out. Please take it." And so it's a good thing for us being selfish because hey, we're driving our business because the legislature is making it harder for you as a private owner to manage your own property. Um, but even for us, it's a challenge. I spend a fair amount of time and resources on our legal team. So they're on speed dial of all right. So what do we do with this?
Yeah. I mean, I still think owning property is the best way to wealth. So I'm not trying to discourage the listener here to not be landlords. It's just it is getting tougher and it is getting a bit more frustrating. So I guess
Agreed.
if I'm hearing what you're saying is just go in with the right mindset, and maybe you do need to hire a professional. You said do it yourself, which I agreed with you, and I sort of still do. I'm kind of on the fence now, but 20 years I would have agreed with you. Now I'm like, I don't know if
Mhm.
someone brand new should be trying to navigate this. There's a lot more risk now than there was.
It's especially in Colorado. If you've got listeners around the U.S., there are definitely more landlord-friendly environments. But I definitely would not recommend someone in Colorado trying to start out on their own, managing their own property. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure how many people, are finding cash flow positive deals in Colorado.
Mhm.
So it's become harder and harder to find new deals. And ultimately, we will see some of the mom and pops go away Those houses will go back to the retail market, owner occupied, and it's still going to exacerbate the housing issue that we have, and that's not enough. So, as I said prior, it's going to have an unintended consequence of hurting the tenant more than it's going to help them, because we're going to continue to see a reduction in supply. The demand is not reducing, and simple economics say prices go up. So an affordability issue continues.
Yeah, and I want to bring this point because it's been in the news a lot. Um, it's about the institutional landlords,
Mhm.
and if you have more than whatever you know more than me probably, if more than 50 doors, then there's these new rules around that. And if it's in one entity more than 50, and then now I'm starting to hear that there's some lawsuits coming in for coercion. What do you call it when the institutional investors are trying to price fix? Corrosion, correct?
Yes, collusion. Yeah,
Collusion.
collusion. Yeah,
Thank you.
and so there's some software that has been in the news
Yeah.
around that, as to, and you can look at the merits of the case as you'd like, and um, it could go either way. We don't use that software. We still do it the old way of looking on Zillow, looking on Rental Meter, looking at our portfolio, and uh,
Uh,
about this, and that's all it is, right? It's an educated guess based on experience and data. Obviously, seasonality matters. So what we're going to get for a property in April, May is not what we're going to get for it in November, December. So being able to make those real time decisions and involve the client, so that's a big part of it. Ultimately, the client drives the price. If they tell me they want 10K a month for a rental, absolutely, we'll try for you. It may not be realistic, but our clients drive the pricing based on what they need and our information that we provide.
right. Thank you. And when I'm reading these different articles and I'm trying to process this, uh, I'm thinking like these are definitely attacks on institutional investors, almost like trying to push them out of the industry. And I mean, there's some significant proposals out there to do just that. And the idea is right. They want to help affordable housing. And if you can increase the inventory of a for sale product, that should bring pricing down. But the
Mhm.
unintended consequence, to your point, and who it's actually going to hurt is the renters because you're taking inventory off the market. What are your
Yep.
thoughts?
No, absolutely. And so a lot of what has happened here in Colorado is to create more affordable housing, safer housing, get rid of the unscrupulous landlords, and those are all good things. But the more regulation, the more people decide, hey, I don't want this anymore.
Mhm.
And so for every rental house or rental unit that comes off the market and goes to an owner occ, that's one less to the renter. So again, it's a supply and demand issue. And unless people decide they don't want to live in Colorado anymore, I don't think we're going to see a fundamental change based on what they're intending to do. The Denver rental license is a great example. If you have a property in the city and county of Denver that's renting, you're required to get a license. Um, do I think it's a money grab? Sure. But are there some improvements that have been made to housing because of it? Absolutely. Um, but that cost gets passed on to someone. So the owner is going to pass it on to the tenant. And we're going to pass that cost to the owner, and it eventually is going to come down to that renter. So every time there's a new law or rule that we have to find a way to fit into the operation, someone's got to pay for it, and that's just simple economics.
This episode is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is a private lender specializing in short-term rehab lending to real estate investors. Got a property that needs some love? We can help. We are able to offer funding solutions because we raise private money from individual investors. With more than 15 years of experience, Pine offers passive investors an alternative that provides stability, consistency, and security to your portfolio. If you like real estate but want to avoid the ups and downs and effort, a Pine mortgage fund could be a perfect fit for you. Accredited investors will experience an 8% preferred return and profit sharing. Diversify your portfolio out of Wall Street and into Main Street with a Pine Financial Group mortgage fund. Get more information at pinefinancialgroup.com. That's pinefinancialgroup.com. Is there anything that's out there right now that in the landscape that scares you?
So there was a recent Colorado Supreme Court ruling, and it's actually what I'll be covering on the Your Castle company meeting, and we'll be touching on it in our class at the ISS regarding jury trials for tenants. So about a week and a half ago, the Colorado Supreme Court ruled via an opinion that a tenant may have a fundamental right to a jury trial. And that could potentially be a challenge. There's more cost involved, there's more time involved, and instead of basing the case on the facts and the merits of the case, you now have an opportunity for someone to feel bad for someone. So we don't know what the impacts are going to be. There are some laws that were passed about in 2023 in regard to prohibited clauses, and one of those is a waiver.
I was just going to ask that.
Of a jury trial, but it is also in limited scope. So the law allowed a carve out for the waiver of a jury trial in possession cases only. So typically when a tenant doesn't pay, you have two issues at hand. They haven't paid and they remain in possession. When we go and deal with a case, an eviction case, it's only around possession. We only want the property back. Money is reserved for a later date and time because you have security deposit, you have additional damages, et cetera. We just want the property back. So there is still a carve out for a waiver of jury trials in possession only. And the Supreme Court opinion upheld that. So if your lease has a waiver and it is worded correctly, there may be an opportunity there that we are able to bypass that right to a jury trial. It also means that tenants will become more savvy and say, hey, I'm not going to sign a jury trial waiver. And then it becomes a cat and mouse game of, okay, well, you do this, I do this, here's where we're going to end up. And, that's how all of this progresses. A new law is made. We got to figure out how the courts are going to rule on it and what operational changes are required to remain in compliance.
Okay. So if a tenant chooses not to sign that waiver, and that's going to be a clause built into the agreement, I assume.
It is.
Can you deny them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
you didn't come to terms on the verbiage in the lease, so I could say, okay, I'm not going to rent to you.
Absolutely. We're not, I want you to change it. I'm not changing it. I won't sign. Okay. Have a good day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. So I would highly encourage landlords to not to miss that, right? To not miss that. I would encourage you to not miss that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Make sure you have your
attorneys. Make sure you use a reputable attorney to write your lease. They're going to protect you. Yeah. Don't pull your lease off the internet and just sign it and say, hey, we're good to go. Our lease goes through legal review twice a year to make sure that and it's my clients, right? It's the landlords that I work for that we're ensuring they're covered.
Yeah. So you go through twice a year, huh?
Absolutely.
Cool. There's a lot going on here. So I want to make sure that the listener knows to come listen to you at the Denver Success Summit. So denveriss.com. This podcast will release before that event. So it's Saturday, November 9th, denveriss.com. We charge $39. Okay. $39. To only charge that because we want to cover our costs. Not a moneymaker for us. We bring experts like Eric in because we don't pay you to be on stage. We want you to provide value, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're trying to help Denver and Colorado investors succeed. That's all we're trying to do. So I encourage you, denveriss.com, come out and check it out. What else? Anything else that you see on the horizon? That
they floated rent control again.
Yeah,
it's one that comes up regularly, and I actually have a less than horrible opinion of rent control. So,
Let's hear it.
uh, well, I, I don't mind rent control. If you tell me that I can raise the rent 5% every year, then I can build into a pro forma over 5 years exactly how much the rent is going to go up. It's going to go up 5%, the maximum. So if they limit your rent increase, so be it. If you're that far under market, then that's probably an operational challenge that needs to be looked at. Um, but if we're at a market rate and we can say that, hey, every year rent's going to go up 5%, then there's no argument with the tenant. There's no question as to, hey, are you going to raise my rent? Absolutely, we are. We're going to raise it 5% because that's what the government said I could do. And if you look at rent control areas, the people who make out on that typically are the landlords. They know that their income is that their revenue is going to increase. So if you have a 10-unit building, you have 10 units that are going up 5% every year. I don't see the problem with it. I'm not a big fan of the government telling me what I can or can't do. There's an argument around that, but fundamentally for rent control, if I know what the increase is, it takes a lot of the ambiguity and the back and forth between tenants uh, out of the equation. So it's all of a sudden that you know that, hey, 5%, you're getting your 5% increase, um, and it's makes it really easy to plan what the property is going to be doing in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So
Interesting.
it's a different approach than a lot of people, but yeah, rent's going up. Part of the reason we like HCV, housing choice vouchers, Section 8, is because they do a cost of living and a fair market rent analysis, and those numbers go up. And so long as it's a rent reasonable increase, we increase Section 8 rents annually
Mhm.
based on the voucher. So there's an opportunity there to continue to gain additional revenue that's built into the system. So I don't see it as problematic as maybe someone else.
Yeah, that's interesting because I would not, I was not expecting you to say that. I got to be honest with you. Here's my problem with it. It doesn't work. And there's test cases, more than one
Sure.
of this. So if you're trying to accomplish a goal and this is your tool you're going to use to accomplish the goal, and there's proof that it doesn't accomplish the goal, it makes no sense to do it. It does not create affordable housing. It
No.
doesn't. And in fact, I'll take it a step further outside of the mom and pop landlords. Signature Bank went down and a lot of stakeholders got hurt. And it was because of rent control in New York. They
Mm.
couldn't increase the income on the buildings enough to cover the debt, and the owners lost the building. And then Signature got hurt, and all of the investors in Signature got hurt. And quite honestly, the tenants could have afforded more because because the wage inflation was high enough.
Mhm.
So that's where it becomes a problem.
Sure. Sure. And we'll see. And what they haven't done is try to pass a law for rent control. They're trying to remove a law on the books that prevents municipalities from putting them in place, and thus far they failed. And we'll see what the next legislative
Yeah.
session holds. Governor Polis has signaled that to the more let's just call it left leaning folks that are pushing for these huge changes in housing. He's kind of signaled like, hey guys, for the last 2 years, I kind of gave you what you wanted. I think we should be okay now. Can we relax a little bit? Because it's not good for business, right?
No.
So uh, if people are selling their homes and they're going to uh, back to homeowners, we've got a housing problem here in Denver and in Colorado. So uh, overall, it's just not good for business.
Well, and to your point earlier, Eric, if you piss off landlords enough, they're going to start selling their houses. And it's
Mhm.
gonna reduce inventory. And maybe let me ask you this, because I honestly don't know. In this rent control and the proposals, I know it's out there. Is it only rent increases or is it trying to like if there's a turnover, can I increase the rent to market rent with the new tenant?
So based on what I read, and I don't have a ton of direct knowledge here, so I don't want to misspeak. But from what I read, the laws that they were trying to pass over the last two legislative sessions were to remove a block on a municipality's ability to put rent control into place. So what I read was just they're simply trying to remove the current blockade from having it. Now, what they do beyond that, I'm sure there's some additional bills out there that spoke about it, but I just don't know that as enough of a fact to make a
Fair enough.
comment there.
Fair enough. A lot of the rent controls that I've seen is annual increases on current rents. When the tenant moves out, then the new tenant, you could charge them market. I mean, you price your property as you want to price your property. And in
Right.
those scenarios, when you have rent control and you have pissed off landlords selling units, less inventory generates higher rent amounts. So you're capped because you can't raise it. But as soon as you turn over, then you pop your rent, and all of a sudden your plan for affordable housing just created more expensive housing.
Yep.
So that's my point.
Yeah.
That's what I'm concerned about.
So it's we'll just kind of see. It's I don't know all the answers. That's for certain.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, what are we going to learn when we come out to the Success Summit and listen to you?
So the big changes happened in 2023. There were, I think, 13 overall laws. So we'll touch on each one of them, and not necessarily what you need to do, but I will share what we have chosen to do, and try to work through what does that do in the data to your day-to-day operation, and what does it look like. So it's things about the prohibited clauses, 2 times rent gross income, pet stuff, that was a big one.
Mhm.
So we'll share what our operational changes were and how we went through the process of doing this. 2024, you have the just cause evictions, or for cause evictions. And the biggest one is habitability. And as much as I'd love to spend a ton of time on that, I don't, because the legal nuances inside of it are extreme. And the penalties for not doing it right are pretty hefty. So when I covered that particular law about habitability, the answer is if your tenant calls and says this is uninhabitable, you say okay, and then you call your attorney. It's a 44-page rewrite of the original 2008 warranty of habitability law here in Colorado. It's confusing, it's contradictory. My attorneys are challenged understanding what they meant. So, but yeah, we'll cover that. We'll kind of touch briefly on the Colorado Supreme Court's couple of opinions, one around the CARES Act, and then about this recent jury trial. So it'll be just some tips and tricks on, hey, this is the law, you should be aware of it, and this is what we've done to operationally change so our clients are in compliance, and how we're playing the cat and mouse game of the tenant.
Man, it sounds like such a lot. Definitely excited, and it's a lot.
It
So
is.
you mentioned something earlier about it's hard to find cash flowing properties in Colorado, which I do agree with. Are you telling people, your friends, you guys talking about investing out of Colorado, outside of the state?
So I own a couple of properties outside of Colorado, and not because I sought out a different market to be in. It just happened to be 2 places that I lived in and retained them. Um, so in Colorado, I think you've got a couple of, you've got good appreciation, right? You get principal pay down, and I think there's still opportunity to own property in Colorado as an investment and be successful at it. But if cash flow is your goal, and that's your metric, that I need X amount of cash flow a month, just given our values have increased, right? Insurances are increasing here in Colorado. Taxes are increasing. So it's just harder and harder to find that cash flowing property. There are other markets, which I know you guys lend up in Minnesota. And I think cash flow is a bit more normal up there, where you can cash flow a property because values are gone up, but they aren't through the roof. and rents are more realistic. So we don't necessarily talk about investing out of state. I certainly wouldn't encourage anyone to go into insert state and then ask me about it, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I've only been a property manager in Colorado, and each state has their own real estate laws. So it'd be hard to advise somebody. I get friends that go, "Hey, will you look at my lease?" Like, sure. What would you like me to tell you? Well, I got to go read the laws for Georgia. Sorry, man. I don't know them.
Yeah. So find local experts.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So interesting.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Minnesota, which we do a fair amount of business up there. In St. Paul, they don't allow month to month leases. So I personally
Really?
love month to month because as a landlord, I have so much more control. So I encourage it. And I mean, COVID was a perfect example. You couldn't evict. There's a moratorium on eviction for non-payment, but I could end a lease if I was on a month to month and evict for, being out of lease.
Sure.
So that
And
was,
the caveat to the eviction moratorium is if you had a federally backed mortgage, right? So if you didn't have a federally backed mortgage, let's say you had portfolio lending with First Bank or Bank of
Mhm.
Colorado, it didn't apply.
Yeah, it's
So,
so interesting. But most
so
people, I
the
mean, your Fannie Freddie debt, that's your cheapest debt you're gonna ever get. So people typically max that money out first, and then they'll go to the portfolio stuff.
Sure, sure. And I work with a lot of investors, so they're in that space.
Yeah.
Um, and so that the CARES Act ruling by the Colorado Supreme Court said that while the eviction moratorium indeed ended, there was never an expiration date around the notice period. So Colorado and I believe three other states agreed. Everyone else disagreed. So if it's a CARES Act covered property, Fannie, Freddie, VA, FHA, uh, or they're a CARES Act covered individual, meaning they receive a federal subsidy, Section 8, then they get a 30-day notice instead of the statutory 10-day notice. So we've got a full mix in our portfolio of we send out 10-day notices, 30-day notices, and understanding the nuances and when and where and how to apply it is a lot of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's just even more and more as I'm listening to you, reason why maybe hiring a management company is smart.
Well, I'll send over my PMA for you to review, and we'll get you into the fold.
All right, man. From here, I'm going to go through a couple of notes. I took some notes while we were hanging out for the last 40 minutes. I want you to just listen and tell me if there's anything I missed or if there's anything you want to expand on or share
Sure.
with the listener. And then I want to make sure we understand how to work with you and your contact info. So tell us about your company, what you charge, what you're looking for in a client. And then I would like you to start thinking about one final piece of advice for maybe a newer real estate investor. All
Okay.
right, so here are my notes. You are big into this business because you want to help people. So you kept saying humanistic approach. That's how you view the business. And that's what led you into the property management. And one thing that you said that I really liked was when you're interviewing potential team members, you ask them why you want to be in a property management because it kind of sucks. And the answer you're looking for is if they want to help people. So I love that. Property management is tough. All investors should manage their own property out of the gate, but then you sort of backtracked on that in the state of Colorado because it is getting tougher and tougher here. You need a legal team, whether you're working with you or anybody else. Now we could lean on your legal team if we're working with you, but you review your leases twice per year. So if you're out there doing this on your own, make sure you're using attorneys. And I have a couple of attorneys, and I can't think of the one, the big one, Spriggs, I think it is. They send out their notices, so I get email updates on all the regulation
Mhm.
changes. So if you have a good attorney, you can get on their mailing list, and they will update you and say, "Here's what you got to do to change your lease." So that's a good way to at least try to stay on top of it. And then you said you like rent control, is what I wrote down. One of very few. No, that's obviously not exactly true, but and then definitely find local experts because every state, and as I pointed out in Minneapolis, even this down to the cities are different. So
And
local
even
experts.
even here in Colorado, right? Colorado Springs, and Pueblo are completely different markets, right? And then you throw in the planet of Boulder, and
Yeah.
that's a completely different animal all on its own. So even within the state, and as you mentioned, down to the municipality, find that local expert.
Yeah, because I've got a handful of properties all throughout Colorado, and I think I only have 2 in Denver proper. So I have to go get the Denver license for 2 properties of the entire portfolio. The other ones are
Mhm.
like I got a whole bunch in Aurora, I got some out west and some up north. They don't I don't need to get a license on those. That's
Right.
probably going to change at some point, but yeah,
I would
everything
imagine.
is different. So that's what I got for my notes. What anything I missed or anything you want to expand on?
No, I mean that's really it. And when you ask kind of how to work with us, I made my bones in the industry by being a resource. So, and I've mentioned your castle a number of times. I've had an amazing partnership with Lon and his entire team through the years. That I'm a resource to him, to his agents, and to their clients. Because if you don't know the answer, pick up the phone and call me and ask me a question. Hey, Eric, I've got this situation. What do you think I should do? And it starts with, well, I'm neither an attorney nor a tax professional. So if you need that, you should call them. But based on what you're telling me, you may look at it this way. And more times than not, I'll get 2 or 3 of those calls. And then 2 or 3 years later, they'll be my client.
Yeah.
So being a resource to investors has been our hallmark and my personal hallmark as I've grown the business.
So how do we get a hold of you?
CRTmanage.com is the website. Eric at CRTmanage.com is my email. I will, and our main phone number is 720-735-7384. Option 4 gets me every time.
Go
So
check it out. He knows what he's doing, guys. Look at his two sentence bio here.
uh, you know, I so I think what happened a bit there was you also asked for the bio for the ISS, and
Oh, that's
uh,
funny.
we're,
That's funny.
we're we're not going to blame it on your team. I'm sure it was my fault.
That's hilarious. I'm just messing with you, man.
Of course, of
So
course.
definitely reach out to Eric if you have any property management needs in Colorado. Is it pretty much just Denver, or are you all over?
Front Range. So Denver, I'm as far north right now as say Erie, Broomfield, as far south, Castle Rock, and then the mountains to Aurora. Don't do anything in the Springs right now. Don't do anything in Pueblo right now. That may be something that we look at down the road. But as Lon used to say, he'll draw a line around the metro, and beyond that, there be dragons. So I don't leave the line very often.
They don't call that redlining, do they?
No, 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 no,
I'm
no,
just
not at
messing with
all.
you again. All right, cool, man.
C470, man.
All right. So final words of wisdom from Mr. Eric Ross, the pro property manager. What can we learn from you?
Make real estate your passion if that's what you want. There are a number of ways to invest. There's a number of ways to make money. If you think real estate is the way you'd like to do it, make it your passion. Learn about it. Be smart about it. There's a thousand podcasts. There's 1,000 articles. Believe what you read what you believe, and really make it your thing. Do your research. That's the biggest one. If you're looking to invest, do your research. Make it your thing. Understand what you're doing, and reach out to people that can help you. Um, I think that would be the best advice, but it's not for everybody. And um, you know, there's 100 ways to make money, and real estate's one of them. So
Love it. And if you come to the Success Summit, you're going to learn multiple different ways to do it. We do have a fix and flip panel at the end, which I happen to know the panelists, and they're amazing. So be sure to come meet me and Eric at the Denver Investor Success Summit, denveriss.com. With that, Eric, hey, man, thank you so much. I know we went a little long today, went almost 50 minutes. I appreciate your time, dude.
oh
I learned
man,
a
that's
lot from
my
you.
pleasure.
There's lots of things you could be doing. You chose to hang out, and I appreciate it, and appreciate that. And the listener, look, there's a lot of podcasts you could choose, and you chose to hang out with us too today and talk about regulations. I so much appreciate that. I'm sure you got a lot of value. Assuming you did, give us a 5-star review, share it with a friend, and I hope you make this day a great one. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you did, please be sure to follow and leave us a review. Oh yeah, and tell a friend.